Tonight, we journey to the frozen edges of the Earth, where ancient rivers of ice move with the patience of time itself. In this episode, Frozen Whispers, the quiet power of glaciers, will uncover the secret strength behind these silent giants. They shape continents, carve valleys, and hold the stories of millennia, all while moving so slowly you'd almost believe they're standing still. So get cozy, dim the lights, and let the gentle chill of science melt into your imagination. This is Snoozy science. You close your eyes. Around you, the air draws in, deep and slow. It's colder here, not sharp, not biting, but vast. The kind of cold that doesn't chase you, but waits. Patient, still. This is the breath of a glacier. You find yourself high above the world, where the sky brushes the tops of mountains. The wind is thin, like thread drawn through frozen needles. There are no paths here, no footprints, only snow, soft as sleep, falling across centuries. It begins not with drama, but with quiet repetition. A snowflake lands, light and laced with crystal memory. Another follows, then 1,000 more. They rest, they settle, they press together like the slow inhale of time. Each flake is delicate. Each flake alone would vanish, but together they begin to transform. You picture the weight, not heavy at first, but insistent. Snow becoming fern, fern becoming ice. Fern is the word for snow that has forgotten its softness, but not yet remembered its strength. It compacts over years, over decades. Air escapes in little sighs between crystals. Pressure folds the snow into something denser, something blue, something that holds time in its body. A glacier is not born in a moment. It does not roar into being. It is a long becoming, a gentle accumulation that forgets beginnings and stretches endlessly forward. You feel it beneath you now. Not ice, not yet, but the suggestion of ice, the promise, the breath before the breath. Listen, the glacier stirs. At first it is nothing but a slow shift in silence. The layers press so tightly that the molecules rearrange. Ice becomes a language of geometry. Hexagons interlock like prayers whispered into frost. Time gets trapped in bubbles, tiny fossils of ancient air. When scientists study these bubbles, they hear the atmosphere's past, sealed away in cold syllables. And yet, the glacier moves. You wouldn't know it from watching. But if you waited, not minutes or hours, but seasons, you'd see the drift. The downward breath. The glacier begins to flow, pulled by gravity's patient hands. Not like a river's rush, but a sigh that takes centuries to complete. You lie against the glacier's edge and feel the weight of that patience. Beneath your fingers, the ice is layered like old pages. Some layers were once storms. Some were quiet years when snow barely fell. Each one tells a story, but none of them speak it fast. There is no rush in a glacier, no hurry in its heart. And yet it shapes mountains. With nothing but time and pressure, it carves valleys, grinds boulders to sand, leaves behind lakes where there was once only stone. This is how something silent can be powerful. This is how something slow can be alive. You imagine the bottom of the glacier now, deep where no light reaches. The ice meets the bedrock. At this boundary, friction builds. Ice melts, not because it is warm, but because of pressure. And from this thin film of water, the glacier glides, like a dream slipping through your thoughts, like a memory remembered just enough to move. Some glaciers crack, some moan, some carry the weight of entire mountain ranges on their backs. And when they finally break, when great chunks carve into the sea, it sounds like a drum in the chest of the earth. But even then, their collapse is slow compared to the heartbeat of weather. A glacier's life is measured in silence, not storms. You take another breath. The air tastes faintly of snow that fell before anyone walked upright. In these frozen places, the past never truly leaves. It sleeps beneath your hands, curled into the ice, dreaming of oceans and sky. There is a glacier in Antarctica that hasn't moved in decades. Scientists call it stable. But even still, its size. A millimeter here, a melt pocket there. Nothing is truly still. Not even this. You think of the time it took for a single flake to become part of this frozen river, of the suns it never saw, of the nights it survived. And now, beneath your body, it moves. Not quickly, not far, but enough. This is how cold breathes. Not in gusts, not in bursts, but in the long rhythm of waiting. A kind of inhale that lasts lifetimes. A kind of pause that holds the shape of everything that came before. Glaciers feed rivers. They birth streams. From silence comes flow. And from that flow, life. You trace the imagined path. From this frozen place to a trickle down the rocks. From trickle to torrent. From ice to liquid memory. This water will travel. It will carry minerals to soil. It will nourish moss. It will one day fill the lungs of something that sings. The glacier doesn't know this. It doesn't need to. It only presses forward, slowly, faithfully. It does not ask to be noticed. It does not ask to be thanked. But tonight, you notice. You feel its breath beneath your back, its whisper beneath your thoughts. The hush of ages holding still, just long enough to become movement. Not everything needs to rush to matter. Not everything must be loud to shape the world. And as your body softens into stillness, you wonder, if this is where cold begins, where does it go? What happens when the breath of the glacier becomes a river's song? You begin to walk, not quickly, not forcefully, just one slow step at a time, letting your body sink gently into the rhythm of descent. Beneath you, the glacier stretches like a sleeping beast, silent and immense. Each step takes you deeper, not just downward through ice, but backward through time. You pause and listen. There is no ticking here, no clock hands, no digital pulses. Time is held, not measured. It thickens, it hushes, it folds itself into the ice. You kneel and place your hand on the surface. At first, it feels like nothing more than cold, sharp, smooth, unremarkable. But then you realize what lies just under that surface. Layers of winter pressed into silence. Layers that have never melted. Some of this snow fell before the first brick was laid in the first city. Some of it knew the breath of mammoths. Some of it holds the sky from a time when the stars were named by other tongues. The ice is not just frozen water. It is a library. Each crystal is a page. Each trapped air bubble a word. Each stratum a chapter. The glacier does not speak in voices, but in structure, in pressure, in patience. You keep moving, following the quiet downward slope. The light shifts. It grows bluer, not dark, but deep. The kind of blue that only lives in places untouched by warmth. This is the color of time under pressure, the hue of memory compressed until it glows. You pause again. Before you, a small dome of ice, clear as glass, stands out. Inside, suspended in its frozen cell, is a single air bubble, a perfect sphere, weightless, still. You lean closer. The bubble is tiny, smaller than the head of a pin, but inside it, the atmosphere of an ancient Earth waits. Oxygen from old forests, carbon from long-dead fires, a breath that once filled the lungs of something now dust. You can't hear it, not really. But if you could, it might sound like the exhale of a forgotten bird or the distant rustle of leaves that no longer grow. Scientists call these bubbles archives of climate. And in them, they read the story of the sky. The warmth of one year, the smoke of another, the long silences between great storms, every eruption, every drought, every shift in the wind. It leaves fingerprints here, pressed gently into the ice. And it isn't just air. Traces of pollen sleep here too. Dust from deserts halfway around the world, even the ash of volcanoes, dark ribbons trapped in clear layers, tell of fire-meeting snow. A glacier remembers everything it touches, even the things that try to pass through unnoticed. You continue downward, and the layers grow denser. The deeper you go, the older the ice becomes. What was once soft snow has become crystal lattice, tight, interlocked, humming with pressure. Some of this ice has waited 100,000 years, some more, and beneath it all, the ice presses inward, folding the past into itself. It is not a passive memory. It holds on with purpose. You wonder, why does it remember? It could melt, it could flow away, join the rivers, reach the sea. But instead, it stays, year after year, century after century, keeping a record no one asked it to keep. Perhaps the glacier is not keeping these memories for us. Perhaps it is simply incapable of forgetting. You rest a hand on your chest. Your breath is slow now, each inhale rising like mist, each exhale softening the cold. You are warm-blooded, made for change, made for motion. But here, in this cathedral of stillness, you feel the difference. Your time is quick, the glaciers is vast. Yet for this brief moment, your times overlap. You think of the people who dig ice cores, slender columns drilled from the deepest ice, held carefully in long metal tubes, shipped across oceans. When they are unwrapped in laboratories, the cores release the faintest sigh. The breath of something older than writing. The breath of a world before names. Inside those cores, there are lines as subtle as eyelashes, each line a snowfall, a storm, a season that passed quietly overhead and settled into silence. And now, here it is, visible, touchable, as if time could be held in your hands. You close your eyes, you imagine the storm that laid one of those layers. You imagine the sun that melted the edges of another. You imagine the footsteps that never fell where the snow drifted, the dreams that dissolved before they reached this place. The glacier remembers all of it. Not perfectly, not neatly, but truthfully. It doesn't edit, it doesn't choose, it just keeps. And here, standing quietly in its heart, you realize something. You too are made of memory. Your cells remember illnesses long past. Your skin remembers sun. Your breath carries stories of food, of forests, of fires. Your bones echo the weight of every step you've taken. And like the glacier, you store things you didn't choose to remember. Sounds, smells, the way certain air feels before it rains. You walk a little farther. The surface under your feet is glassy now. You see ripples, faint lines that shimmer just beneath the surface. They aren't flaws, they're layers, like tree rings, like sediment, like thought. And you feel it again. This place is not just cold, it is kind. It holds its history not out of fear, but out of reverence. It does not discard, it does not rush. Even the snow falling now, soft as breath, is already beginning its descent into memory. You exhale. The warmth of your breath curls into the air and disappears. But part of it stays. Part of it lingers, pressed invisibly into the atmosphere, into the cycle, into the story. You are not separate from the glacier. You are another page in time. And if you stood here long enough, still enough, maybe the glacier would remember you too. Maybe, in some distant century, a scientist would drill a new core, slice it open, and find the trace of a breath. A warmth that didn't belong, a story sealed in blue. You place your hand on the ice one last time. It is soft beneath the surface, patient, vast, alive in its stillness. And as you turn to climb back toward the light, you wonder, if the glacier remembers the sky, what stories does the sky remember in return? And where do those memories go when the first droplet begins to fall? You walk slowly now. The ground beneath you feels firmer, but not safer. Something beneath your feet is shifting, not in motion, but in tension. You pause, and the wind carries a soft sound, a low groan, a stretched sigh. It doesn't crash, it doesn't echo, it simply continues, as if the glacier is exhaling a secret it has kept too long. A crevasse has opened, not with fury, not with a shout, just a quiet surrender, like cloth pulled too tight, like paper torn with hesitation. These are the glacier's sentences, stretched long across its skin, its thoughts, its fractures, its soft confessions. You edge closer. The crack isn't wide at first. It looks like a shadow or a stroke of ink against the pale blue. But as you peer deeper, you see its depth, a blue that turns to indigo, then black, then something you cannot name. The crevasse drops out of sight, as if it leads not downward, but inward, into memory, into meaning. Crevasses form when the glacier moves faster than it wants to. The top layers resist, the bottom slides, the middle tears. The glacier does not complain, but it cannot help revealing the places where its patience breaks. These cracks are not signs of weakness. They are the glacier's language, a way of showing strain, a way of saying, "Here I am stretched too thin." You kneel beside the crevasse. You feel its chill rising like breath. The air near its edge is sharper. Not angry, just ancient. You place your hand flat on the ice beside it, careful, reverent. The glacier says nothing, but you feel the words beneath your palm. Scientists study crevasses to understand how glaciers move, not just where they go, but how they feel, where they carry pressure, where they yield. The lines in the ice tell stories of stress, of slope, of friction and force. They are not accidents. They are letters formed by shifting weight. Some crevasses are shallow. Some yawn open wide enough to swallow light. Some stay hidden, covered by snow. These are the most dangerous, the invisible edges in the world's stillness. But tonight, there is no danger, just depth, just a listening. You lower yourself onto your stomach, close to the edge. You let your breath even out. Let the ice meet your cheek. The cold is intense but steady. It doesn't sting, it invites. Inside the crevasse, the walls are striated, lined like wood grain, like muscle, like age. These are layers that once lay flat, now bent into shapes you cannot chart. The fracture has revealed what is usually hidden. It has made the inside visible. You listen, not for words, but for rhythm, for resonance. Sometimes, as the glacier shifts, the crevasse will sing, a low-frequency sound, too deep for the human ear, but your body can feel it, a faint hum, a vibration in the bones, as if the glacier is whispering directly to your marrow. You breathe in sync with the silence, and in that quiet, you feel it. This is not damage. This is communication. The ice is not broken. It is speaking. You recall how crevasses sometimes heal. Snow drifts in. Time presses the edges close again. What was once open becomes whole. But the memory stays. The stress line remains buried, invisible, but real. The glacier remembers its own strain. You think of your own body, how it too holds fractures, quiet ones. Cracks that formed not from breaks but from stretching, from trying to bear more than you could. These crevasses didn't split you. They spoke for you. And with time, they softened, covered over. But they're still there, deep inside. Careful lines that remember where you've stretched too thin. You sit back. The sky above you is heavy with stars. Cold light on colder ground. The crevasse beside you remains open, but calm. It isn't growing. It isn't threatening. It is simply being. An honest mark in the glacier's slow language. Some explorers leap over crevasses. Some fall in. Some build bridges. But tonight, you do none of these. You only sit beside it. You learn its shape. You honor its presence. You learn that even stillness has tension, that silence can crack and still remain whole. And as the wind shifts slightly, brushing snow across the edge, you look down once more into the deep. You do not fear what it holds. You only wonder, what happens when a crevasse begins to fill with light? You rest in the stillness, but beneath you, something shifts. It is not sudden. It is not sharp. There is no splash, no roar, no tumbling white water. And yet, you are moving. You lie atop a glacier that flows, not like the rivers you've seen, not eager, not bright with sound. This river is cold, vast, quiet as breath held between sentences. It glides not with speed, but with certainty, not with urgency, but with memory. And still, it flows. Glaciers are rivers of ice. That is the simplest truth. But river feels too fast, and ice too still. The truth lies somewhere in between, in the way the glacier neither hurries nor pauses. It simply yields slowly to the gravity beneath it. Imagine honey spilled on a tilted plate, thick and golden. It resists the pull for a moment, then stretches, then slides. A glacier is like that, only slower, only colder, a slowness that stretches time itself. You're not sure you would see it move if you watched for an hour, or even a day. But if you returned after a season, or a year, or a decade, you'd find it in a new place. That's the nature of this frozen river. It travels without looking like it's leaving. You close your eyes and feel it now, not the movement, but the momentum. A deep, glacial momentum. The weight of billions of tons of ice, pushed gently downhill by the simple, patient pull of gravity. You are riding something ancient, something with memory in its spine and time in its veins. Not just riding it, becoming part of it. Inside a glacier, the ice is not rigid, not entirely. Under pressure, it behaves like something soft. The molecules shift past one another. The cold resists change, but the weight insists. The deeper the layer, the more it yields. You imagine the layers moving like stacked blankets, the top drifting a little faster, the bottom clinging to the bedrock, slowed by friction. Between them, layers shear and stretch. The glacier bends. It doesn't break, and so it flows. The ice at your back may be thousands of years old. It began as snow, then fern, then blue ice, and now it glides, one careful inch at a time, across valleys and ridges. Over time, it polishes stone, carves mountains, shapes landscapes no human hand could shape. Its passage is slow, but its power is vast. And here you are, floating on it, eyes closed, breath calm, body small. You are being carried by something that has outlasted forests, cities, empires. This is what it feels like to move without haste. You open your eyes. Ahead of you, the glacier curves between peaks, a silver-blue ribbon laid across a white world. You watch its edges, where it scrapes against the valley walls. There the ice buckles, rises in ridges, crumbles into seracs. It does not mind being changed. It only minds being stopped. There are places where the glacier thins, where it speeds up, where it slips on meltwater, sliding more easily than it should, and other places where it clings to the rock, dragging boulders like forgotten memories. Every glacier has its rhythm, its particular pace. Some creep a few inches a year, others travel several feet each day. Some surge suddenly, like a long-held breath released all at once. But even then, even in movement, there is no rush. The glacier is never hurrying. It is only continuing. You think of your own life, how often you've felt pulled to move faster, to measure progress in speed, in urgency, in miles per hour. But here, the glacier teaches something different. That movement does not require noise. That motion can be a form of stillness. You shift slightly, and the cold beneath you presses into your spine. It feels like being held by something enormous and gentle. A presence that knows where it is going, even if you don't. You imagine yourself as part of the glacier now, not riding it, but woven into it. Your breath becomes frost. Your bones become crystal. Your memories drift slowly downward, joining the deep blue layers. You are moving, yes, but more than that, you are becoming. Far below, where the glacier meets the rock, there is a hidden world. Here, ice melts not from warmth, but from pressure. Tiny rivulets form, pooling into subglacial streams. These hidden rivers rush beneath the slow weight, shaping channels in the stone. The glacier glides on this thin film of meltwater, like a whisper riding on breath. And sometimes, those waters rise, press upward, fracture the ice from below, reminding the glacier that even slowness contains surprises. You think of the phrase, glacial pace, often spoken with frustration. But now, it feels like a compliment. To be glacial is not to be slow without purpose. It is to be slow with depth, to carry worlds across centuries, quietly, surely. And what does the glacier carry? Stones, soil, fragments of mountain, a record of the landscapes it has touched. When the glacier melts, as all glaciers eventually do, it leaves behind what it carried. It shapes valleys, forms lakes, seeds rivers, and from these waters, life grows. The glacier's legacy is not just ice, it is transformation. You breathe in slowly. The air is still. The ice beneath you moves. And for a moment, you are part of something with no beginning or end. Just a steady unfolding. You press your hand to the glacier's surface, not to measure its speed, but to feel its patience. To understand that motion does not need noise, that transformation does not need haste. And as you gaze into the horizon, you wonder, if this river of ice moves without rushing, what happens when it finally meets the warmth below? What does it become when the patient ice turns back into water and remembers how to run? You begin to descend again, not across space but through substance, through the dense body of the glacier, layer by layer. You move not with your feet, but with your senses, with your breath, with your presence sinking slowly into depth. And the deeper you go, the more everything changes. The silence sharpens, the cold thickens, and the color begins to bloom. It begins pale, like the inside of a pearl, soft grays, whispered whites. But as you go lower, the whiteness dissolves, shadows stretch longer, and soon the world becomes blue. Not just any blue, but something impossibly deep. A blue that feels ancient, a blue that hums. It presses gently against your skin, and you realize this is the heart of the glacier, and it is alive with color. You sit within it now, wrapped in stillness. There is no light source here, and yet, light is everywhere. It spills in softly from above, from the sun that touched the surface hours ago, maybe days. But in this deep ice, light doesn't travel fast. It slows, it bends, it scatters. Blue, with its short and strong wavelengths, stays longest. It slips furthest. It becomes the soul of the glacier. And so, the deeper you go, the more blue you find. You run your fingers along the icy wall beside you. It's not rough. It's not smooth. It's something in between. A surface made not for touch, but for memory. And the ice doesn't just sit here passively. It holds itself tightly, molecule to molecule. Water frozen into a lattice of hexagons, repeating across centuries. Each molecule holds the next like a hand in winter, firm, close, connected. This is what happens when snow becomes pressure. The weight above pushes out the air. Crystals fuse. Cavities close. The light can no longer bounce wildly, so it sinks deeper, tightens its wavelength, and settles into blue. You inhale. The cold is sharper here, but not cruel. It is purposeful. You can feel it in your lungs, a cleanness you didn't know you missed. Scientists say this deep glacier ice is some of the purest water on Earth. No salts, no dust, no modern trace, just hydrogen and oxygen locked in a dance so compact it shines. And it does shine. That's the strange thing. Even in the dark, the ice glows faintly. Not like a fire, not like a screen, but like something remembering light. You think of all the forces that shaped this moment. Storms, centuries, the simple press of time. And still, the result is beauty. It makes you wonder about your own layers, the parts of you that were shaped by pressure. Moments you thought would only leave cracks, but instead made color. Not at the surface, but beneath. Blue, where no one thought to look. You shift just slightly and catch the glint of an air bubble sealed in the wall. It's so small, so round. Inside it, a pocket of atmosphere untouched for 10,000 years. The breath of ancient forests. The sigh of air before engines. A tiny, trapped sky. And around it, more blue, deeper than ink, softer than midnight. A blue that feels less like a color and more like a song. You lean closer. You listen with your whole body. There is no melody, and yet something moves. You begin to feel what the glacier has always known. That pressure can clarify. That stillness can amplify. That silence, held long enough, begins to sing. This is not an echo. It's a resonance. Down here, the glacier is not a thing. It's a presence, not passive, not inert, but structured, aware in its own slow way. And you, here within it, are not an observer. You are part of its depth now. You are part of its blue. This is the place where the ice is strongest, compacted, unyielding, yet full of light. Here, the glacier holds its oldest memories. Here, beauty is born from compression. You trace the wall again. You notice fractures, fine as threads. They don't weaken the ice. They give it texture. They let in just enough light for color to breathe. You wonder, could that be true in other things too? That the places under pressure, the places that feel too deep, too heavy, are also the places where beauty is most likely to grow. You stay still. Let the cold hold you. Let the blue rise inside you. And as you prepare to move again, you lift your head slowly and ask, if color deepens where the light slows, what happens when the blue begins to break into warmth? You lie still, listening to the cold. It hums softly, like the absence of motion, like silence wrapped in glass. Nothing moves here, nothing breathes. The air is thin and sharp, the ice endless. By every rule of warmth and life, this should be emptiness. And yet, something stirs, not a sound, not a shape, not even a shadow, but a presence, something quiet, something impossibly small. It's strange to think of life here, life without sunlight, without soil, without heat. But even in the loneliest parts of the glacier, where the cold feels eternal, something waits, something microscopic, something ancient. Beneath your resting body, sealed in ice, are frozen timekeepers, single-celled organisms, older than empires, deeper than memory. For thousands of years, they've slept, not dead, not lost, just waiting, preserved in the dark, in the cold, in the hush. And they still know how to wake. Scientists call them extremophils, creatures that love extremes, microbes that laugh at the rules of survival. Some live in lakes buried beneath miles of glacier. Others cling to the walls of subglacial streams, suspended in liquid threads thinner than hair. Some have never seen the sun. Others froze when mammoths walked and thawed when we sent up satellites. But to them, time means little. Temperature means little. All they need is a moment, a glimmer of water, a thread of chemical energy. Then they begin again. You imagine one now, a speck, invisible to the eye. It floats inside the ice, curled like a comma. It has not moved in 20,000 years, but it remembers how. This glacier is not empty. It is not dead. It holds entire ecosystems, hidden, quiet, alive and waiting. Tiny veins of meltwater lace through the ice, like capillaries in bone. And within them, colonies grow. They do not need the light. They do not need warmth. They feed on minerals, on sulfur, on things too small to see. And in return, they create warmth of a different kind. The warmth of presence, of endurance. You sit up slowly. Your breath curls in the air. You press your ear to the ice, as if it might speak. And in a way, it does. Because life always finds a way to whisper. Even here, in this hush of blue and white, it hums. a rhythm of survival, a pulse of breathless persistence. In Antarctica, under 3 kilometers of ice, there's a lake called Vostok. It's been sealed off for millions of years. When scientists first drilled into it, they found water untouched by surface air and life, bacteria, archaea, swimming in a place no sunlight had ever entered. They called it alien. But it wasn't. It was Earth. Just a part of Earth we hadn't listened to. You think of those microbes, their slow stirrings. Of other glaciers, where ancient viruses lie sleeping, locked in crystal until the world thaws. Of red algae that blooms on snowfields, staining the white with streaks of blood-coloured life. A reminder that colour can grow even in the cold. Even here, the rules are not so simple. The glacier may look solid, but inside, it breathes in veins. Water flows beneath it, warmed by the pressure above. And wherever water flows, life slips in. You imagine an entire world underfoot, a hidden network of streams and chambers, a shadow rainforest made of microbes and minerals, where every movement is microscopic, but every moment is alive. And above it all, you, a temporary visitor lying quietly atop a cathedral of sleeping life. You exhale, and suddenly you realize you are not separate from this. You carry your own hidden ecosystems, trillions of microbes living in your mouth, your lungs, your gut, tiny worlds inside you, balanced and busy, responding to breath and food and thought. You too are a glacier of lives. You too hold silence and warmth side by side. And just like this frozen place, your stillness can be full of stirrings. Your coldest layers can hold the most surprising light. You reach out and trace the snow beside you. It doesn't resist. It doesn't yield. It simply exists, soft, persistent, alive with memory. The wind brushes past your shoulder, not harsh, just curious. It lifts a few crystals of snow, and you watch them spin, each one a world, each one full of waiting. You lie back down, you listen again. Not with your ears, with your awareness. And in that space, you begin to feel it. The warmth that comes from presence, the life that hides in the forgotten places, the truth that even cold things remember how to grow. And as the wind quiets and your breath deepens, you begin to wonder, if life can bloom in the veins of a glacier, what other warmth waits in the places we call still? And what might wake the next time the ice remembers how to melt? You wake to wind, not a storm, not a gust, but a steady exhale, a breath across the snow, long and low, the kind of wind that doesn't shake or shout but reminds you the world is always moving. You sit up, the glacier beneath you unchanged, but above, the air stirs with purpose, and you begin to understand. This wind began with ice. You were told that glaciers don't move quickly, that they shape the land beneath them. But no one mentioned they shape the sky too. Glaciers breathe, not in the way lungs do, but through the quiet language of temperature and pressure. Their cold rises in slow waves, cooling the air above, changing how it flows, altering where clouds gather and when rain falls. A single glacier can birth a wind, can bend a season, can send echoes into the sky that return as snow or drought, rain or calm. You walk to the edge of a ridge and watch. Below, the valley stretches wide, carved by the glacier's passage long ago. It looks still, but the air dances through it. The wind follows paths the glacier etched with its slow body, like fingers drawn through clay. This is katabatic wind, a word from science, but in truth, a whisper from ice. Cold air, heavy and dense, slips down slopes like water. It slides beneath warmer layers, pressing outward from the glacier's edge. It begins so subtly you wouldn't notice, but in time, it gains force, enough to shape weather far away, enough to dry a plain or stir a storm. You close your eyes and feel it against your skin, not sharp, but purposeful. The glacier is not just a frozen body. It is a presence that speaks with the atmosphere. From above, satellites trace these movements. the slow pulse of wind born from ice. From below, you feel them in your breath, in the way your coat lifts slightly at the hem, in the hush between one gust and the next. Glaciers do not hoard their cold. They share it. They press it outward into the sky, and the sky responds. You remember something a glaciologist once said? That a retreating glacier can shift rainfall patterns hundreds of miles away. That a growing glacier can dim the sun, drawing clouds close and holding light at bay. The glacier is not just a frozen relic, it is an architect of climate. And now, as you stand in the glacier's shadow, you see the threads it pulls. Clouds drag themselves across the sky as if tied by invisible strings. The wind curls in your hair, guided by channels the ice carved long ago. The sun filters through a veil of moisture the glacier itself cooled into place. You walk slowly along the ice's edge. Each step stirs the air. You imagine your movement blending with the glacier's long breath, a momentary partnership between flesh and frost. Even the air near the ground tells the story. It smells different, sharper, cleaner, infused with the slow exhale of the glacier. A signature written not in ink, but in molecular currents. There is warmth in the air too, not from the ice, but from the way it bends the world. The sun strikes the glacier and reflects light, changing local temperatures, altering which insects hatch, which flowers open. Everything from migratory birds to atmospheric pressure is nudged, however slightly, by this presence of ice. You think of climate not as something separate from the land, but as a conversation between elements. The glacier speaks in cold, the wind answers in motion, the clouds listen, the seasons adjust their tone. It's a rhythm that unfolds slowly but clearly. The ice shapes the wind shapes the rain feeds the river feeds the tree exhales oxygen, and that breath too returns to brush against the glacier's face. Nothing is still, nothing is separate. Even in silence, the world loops. You sit again, feel the wind at your cheek, watch it pick up a loose curl of snow and carry it forward. The snow dances like a whisper remembered, and in that moment you understand. The glacier is not just cold, it is continuity. The past moves outward from it, not just downward. The cold you feel is not an end. It's a beginning. And as the wind softens, as the snow settles, you begin to wonder, if the glacier's breath can shape the weather, then what happens when that breath begins to fade? You return to the glacier, but something has changed. The air is warmer now, not hot, not loud, but noticeably altered. There is a softness to the snow that wasn't there before, a wetness at the edges of silence, and beneath your feet, a sound, drip, drip, drip. It is not dramatic, it is not violent, but it is constant, and it is how the glacier leaves, not in one great collapse, not in a burst, but slowly, with grief measured in molecules, with memory melting into motion. You kneel beside a narrow stream that wasn't here before. It runs along the glacier's edge, a thin ribbon of meltwater, clear as breath, warm as regret. You dip your fingers into it. The cold is still present, but it's different. Not preserved, but passing. This is water that once lay sealed in the deepest layers. Water that once held air from another world, and now it runs freely across stone, shedding time with every inch. You follow the stream. It cuts through the moraine, a path of rocks the glacier once carried, once protected, now dropped like bones at the edge of retreat. These stones were moved across continents slowly, quietly. Now they sit in sun, warming for the first time in centuries. You look back. The glacier is smaller than it was. Even from here, you can tell. Its edge is farther up the slope, the walls thinner, its breath lighter. It doesn't announce it's leaving. It just steps back. And step by step, the world forgets where it used to be. You run your palm along a slab of exposed bedrock, polished smooth by millennia of pressure. Now bare, now hot under the afternoon sun. You ask yourself, how does time feel when it runs away? Not like hours, not like days, but like presence fading, like stories unspooling into silence. Glaciologists call it retreat, but that word feels too gentle, too passive. This isn't a choice. This is loss. And yet the glacier doesn't resist. It doesn't grip. It doesn't rage. It lets go. It melts, drop by drop, thread by thread, into rivers, into oceans, into clouds. And in that release, the world changes. You pause beside a widening pool. This was once part of the glacier's tongue, a lobe of ice that reached down the valley. Now it's a lake. Fresh, blue, still forming. You sit by its edge, watch the reflections of clouds, hear the creak of stones shifting underwater. Somewhere beneath the surface, trapped gases rise, air that slept inside ice for centuries, now joining the wind. This is how memory disappears, not with erasure, but with diffusion, not into silence, but into breath. You feel a strange mix of awe and ache. The melting is beautiful, the shimmer of light, the curve of liquid across rock, the gentleness of release. And yet, beneath that beauty is the sound of something ending. The glacier is more than ice. It is balance. It is rhythm. It is the slow keeper of planetary breath. When it melts, the oceans rise, the weather shifts, the forests burn more easily, the winds forget where they used to go. You trace your hand in the pool. Tiny currents spiral away. Everything is connected, and everything is warming. You think of the microbes you met earlier, those that waited inside the ice, those that knew how to wake. They are waking faster now. Some that should have stayed sealed now stir too soon. Old viruses, ancient bacteria. Life that was meant to stay asleep now wanders into a world that didn't expect it. Even memory has consequences. You lift your eyes to the horizon. There are other glaciers, still vast, still breathing. But each year they shrink. Each summer they weep. Their lines recede like ink washed from skin. Maps have to be redrawn. Footpaths vanish. Whole ecosystems shift upstream in search of cold that no longer lingers. You look up at the peaks. Snow still clings to the highest ledges. But it's thinner, more like a veil than a blanket. And the sky above, so clear, so wide, feels heavy with knowing. The glacier's retreat is not just a local event. It is global. It is personal. The meltwater that trickles here may one day rise against distant shores, may join with rain that feeds or floods, may become part of a cycle too large to see, too slow to stop. And yet, the glacier does not hurry its exit. It continues to teach even as it leaves. It reminds you that nothing is permanent. Not silence, not ice, not memory. But it also shows you that even endings can be graceful, that letting go can be slow and full of meaning. You lie down beside the water. The ground is damp but still cool beneath you. You close your eyes and let the sound of melting be your breath. And in that soft rhythm, you wonder, if the glacier remembers how to vanish, what do we remember as it disappears? And where will that memory go once the last drop is gone? You walk where ice once ruled. There is no glacier beneath your feet now, no shimmering field of frozen breath, no creaking weight, no sighing wind. The ice is gone, but it is not forgotten. You see its story in the ground. Boulders lie scattered like thoughts dropped mid-sentence. Rocks polished to smoothness, their roughness long worn away. A valley stretched wide and deep, cradled by slopes that once felt the press of cold centuries. The glacier has left, but in leaving, it became something else. It became shape. It became memory carved into stone. You step across bedrock striations, parallel grooves scratched into the earth like fingernail marks. They point in a single direction, tracing the glacier's slow crawl. Lines drawn by stones carried under its belly, dragged for miles without protest, marking time not in minutes but in meters. Each mark is a sentence, Together, they are a passage. You read them without needing to speak. This is how stillness leaves its echo. Where the glacier once curved between cliffs, now there is a U-shaped valley, wide, gentle, impossible to mistake for anything else. Rivers make V's, sharp and narrow, but ice widens, ice smooths, ice leaves space. The land here was not just shaped, it was sculpted, by weight, by pressure, by patience. You reach a lake, still and blue. It wasn't here before the ice. This water rests in a hollow left behind, a depression where the glacier once paused, then pulled away. The lake is not a wound. It is an offering. Tarn, Kettle, Moraine dammed. Names for different kinds of glacial lakes. But they are all stories of absence, filled with reflection. You kneel by the shore. The water touches your fingers. Cold still lingers, but there is peace in it now. You trace the edge of an erratic, a massive boulder resting alone on the plain, different from the local stone, out of place and yet deeply rooted. The glacier carried it here, lifted it, held it, dropped it. And now it sits, a monument to movement, a traveler whose journey ended in silence. You look around and see more. Hummocks of soil and stone, moraines, heaped like final breaths at the glacier's edge. They are not arranged. They are not neat. But they are intentional. The last act of a glacier is to rearrange the world. You think of all that reshaping, all that force wrapped in slowness. It didn't roar, it didn't shatter, it pressed, it persisted. And then it left. But its leaving was a gift. This valley, this lake, this silence, they are not blank spaces. They are glacial footprints, evidence of presence, of work done in quiet. You look back along the path you've walked. You imagine the glacier rising behind you, not as a destroyer, but as an artist. An immense cold brush painting the terrain with time. And now, in its absence, the painting remains. You run your fingers over another polished stone. Feel its smoothness, its softened edges. This is what it means to be touched by time. You think of your own absences, things you've left behind, chapters you've closed, places you no longer return to. And you wonder, what marks have you made? What landscape have you shaped, not by staying, but by leaving? The glacier didn't cling. It gave. And in giving way, it changed everything. You close your eyes. Feel the warmth of the valley air, the hush of water lapping against the shore. There is no ice here, but its echo lives in every line. And in that stillness you begin to understand. Even silence leaves a form. And maybe the most lasting things are not those that stay, but those that shape and go. You wake before dawn. The light has not yet touched the sky, but something ancient is stirring. Not in the wind, not in the snow, but deep beneath it, slow, steady, alive. A glacier breathes nearby, and it is not gone. You stand once more upon a sheet of ice, not one in retreat, not one in collapse, but one that sleeps, still intact, still immense, its silence full of strength. There are places left on this earth where the cold still holds, where ice spans valleys, stretches across mountain spines, and rests in folds carved by time itself. You feel it beneath your boots, the thickness, the weight, the memory. This glacier hasn't yet wept. It hasn't yet slipped into water and wind. It remains, not untouched, but enduring. You walk slowly across its surface, watching the first hints of dawn brush the snow with silver. Here, the glacier lies smooth, a great sleeping form curled in its own breath. It doesn't speak, but it listens. You wonder what it dreams of. Perhaps of colder nights, of thicker skies, of storms that once added to its body rather than took from it. Or maybe it dreams of nothing at all, content only to hold what has come before. You reach a ridge and look down. The glacier stretches out beneath you, winding between mountains like a frozen river of thought. You trace its curves with your eyes, each turn, a patient gesture, each rise and dip, a sentence half spoken. These are the sleeping giants, the ones not yet lost, the ones that still hold time in their arms. You crouch and place your hand on the ice. The cold moves through you, not sharply, not cruelly, but with the firm gentleness of truth. This glacier, and others like it, still shapes the world. It reflects sunlight back to space, cooling regions far beyond its reach. It holds water that feeds cities and rivers. It steadies wind patterns. It whispers to the clouds. It cradles life beneath and within its frozen folds. In Greenland, Antarctica, the Himalayas, the Andes, glaciers still breathe, still shift, still speak, not loudly, but with presence. You sit in the snow and listen to the quiet. This is not a place of urgency. It is a place of balance, of breath slowed to a rhythm the rest of the world has forgotten. The glacier does not beg to be noticed. It exists whether you see it or not. But here, now, you do see it, and it changes you. You remember what scientists have said. There is still time, not forever, but enough. Enough to protect, enough to preserve, enough to learn. If the world chooses balance, the glaciers will not vanish all at once. They can remain, not untouched, but tended, respected. This is not a hopeless place. This is not a closing door. It is a threshold. You run your fingers over a nearby drift, soft on the surface, dense beneath. Each flake once drifted from a sky full of chance. Each one joined the glacier's body, not knowing it would be part of something so vast. You think of all the elements gathered here across time. Sunlight buried in layers, dust from deserts and ocean away, pollen from forests long gone, bubbles of air from ancient fire. It is not just ice you touch. It is the library of Earth. You rise again. Your breath fogs the air. The glacier holds steady, and in its steadiness, you feel the shape of hope, not a loud hope, not a dramatic one, but a quiet, rooted, glacial hope, one that says, it is not too late to listen. It is not too late to care. It is not too late to stay. The sky begins to lighten now, soft streaks of amber behind the peaks. You walk forward, following a faint ridge in the ice. Each step is gentle. Each sound is muffled by snow. You are alone, but not lonely. You are accompanied by time. At the edge of a cliff, you stop. Below, the glacier flows like a frozen tide, slow, immense, and certain. You imagine its future, not in loss, but in continuation, in protection, in balance. Not all glaciers must vanish. Some may remain. If we move carefully, if we choose differently, if we learn how to live not on top of the earth, but with it. You place a hand over your heart. Feel your own rhythm. Feel the glaciers too. 2 pulses, one fast, one slow, but both still here. You breathe deeply. The air is sharp but whole. You think of the generations that may still walk these paths, who may still kneel beside this ice, still hear its breath, still feel the hush of balance beneath their feet. The glacier sleeps, but it is not gone, not yet. You look to the sky. The first sun slips over the ridge. It spills gold across the white, and in that warm light, you see not just what has been, but what could still be. You close your eyes. Let the warmth touch your skin. Let the cold remain at your back. And in the breath between night and morning, you ask, if we can still hear the dreams of sleeping glaciers, can we also remember how to dream with them? Is this conversation helpful so far? And 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 helpful so far?